Hey, what's up to anybody who's watching? This is a continuation of my videos talking about my experience with New York City DDR in the beginning of, DDR, how it blew up and, how I was involved in that and what it was like to play DDR in the early part of the game. So, I have my tea with me this time. And let's just get into it. So my last video was like the end of fifth mix. And like I mentioned in my previous videos, I mentioned this a few times already, New York City didn't get fourth mix and we didn't get sixth mix. I'm not really sure why. My speculation was that these DDR mixes were coming out so quickly that the arcades either couldn't afford to buy them that quickly, or the demand wasn't high enough, or they just couldn't keep up with how fast these new iterations of DDR were coming out. And for anybody who doesn't play, every time they come out with a new DDR mix, it's like a bunch of new songs. Some of the songs are a little bit more difficult. Sometimes they change the way that the arrows look a little bit. So it was always exciting when they had a new mix. The weird thing was, for me anyway, whenever the time in between mixes felt like forever. Like if you would have told me that it was like 2 years between fifth mix to seventh mix, I almost would have believed it, even though it wasn't. It was like a matter of months, but it just felt like each mix was such a significant period of time. But if I look on Wikipedia or something, fifth mix might have only been out as the latest mix for like a few months before they came out with Max. Anyway, we never got DDR Max. We went from fifth mix straight to seventh mix. When we had fifth mix, people who were more involved in the community would take trips. Like I mentioned in my previous video, they would take trips to New Jersey to go play DDR Max because it was the newest DDR mix and, they wanted to play the songs. I was still kind of newish to the community when people would do that, so I never really went on those trips. I hadn't been to New Jersey yet. I'd just been in New York City arcades. And I remember people would go and they would come back to Broadway City. They would go early on Friday and they would come back to Broadway City on Friday. And my friends, like my friend Stefan, or other people who would go, would tell me about the songs. And they would tell me about, this song that they put on DDR Max called Max 300. And it was really difficult. This song was almost impossible to pass. At the time on fifth mix, the most difficult songs were rated 9 feet. Like DDR has these little feet that they use to rate how difficult the song is, and the hardest songs were 9 feet. And Max 300 was kind of discouraging for me because I had just learned how to be okay at 9-footers, which are the most difficult songs in the game. I might have passed leading cyber. I was doubling the easier 9-footers. And then, my friends are coming back and telling me there's this song that's even more difficult than the 9-footers called Max 300. If you went on DDR Freak during that time and you looked at the step charts for Max 300, it was they didn't have an animation for freeze arrows. So for the freeze arrows, they would just put a bunch of 16th notes or 32nd notes together to make it look like a freeze arrow. And the step count for Max 300 back then was a couple thousand steps or something crazy, way high up there or whatever. So I remember being at work one day looking at the step chart to Max 300 and being I don't even know how anybody could pass this song, because I didn't even know really about freeze arrows. Sorry, I'm just gonna adjust this. I didn't really even know about freeze arrows because there were no freeze arrows in fifth mix. And for those who don't know, freeze arrows are these arrows where you step on them and you have to keep your foot on that arrow until the freeze arrow is over. So Max 300 just looked crazy. People were telling me it was crazy. People were saying it was crazy. And they were saying you can't pass Max 300 unless you use the bar. Now I want to talk about this because New York, back when I played, was very well known for this. The culture of DDR in New York City was such that we didn't play with the bar. It was highly discouraged playing with the bar. I couldn't even tell you exactly what the origins were. I don't think that this was exclusive to New York. I think that other places also kind of independently developed this ideology, but we were very much no bar. It wasn't even like people in New York back when I played fifth mix used the bar. It was so like frowned upon that just nobody even did it. And if you did anything back then, and like any accomplishment at all, and you used the bar, like people wouldn't even regard it. If back then, if you got a single digit amount of greats, we called it SDG. If you got an SDG on a song on fifth mix, and like, I don't know, like leading cyber, but say you got 5 greats on leading cyber on fifth mix, which would have been mind blowing back then. And you used the bar, like nobody would have even cared about your score. That's just how it was. Like, that's kind of how it was before I started playing, and they just kept continuing like that. So, you know, that was going back to Max 300. It was like, you can only pass this song if you use the bar. You can't pass this song unless you use the bar. And I was almost relieved that we didn't get 6 mix at some point, because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do good on that song. I was comfortable where I was, which plays into a lot of stuff that I'll talk about later on about like players and like good players and like avoiding difficulties. But like I was comfortable because now I'm just like, I'm getting like good greats on Rhythm and Police, and like now this is a song. I know the song is going to kick my ass. Like I already know before I even try it, it's going to kick my ass. I might have gotten Max 300 at some point on Stepmania. Stepmania was a DDR simulator that people would install on their computers, and I might have played it with my fingers. So even back then, like I would have just been like, I know I can't pass this song. But that was the culture in New York City. The other thing that they did on DDR when DDR Max came out was they introduced this thing called speed mods, which spread the arrows out to make it easier to see the arrows. And this ultimately turned into a controversial subject in New York City as well. And it got treated just like the bar when we got 7th mix. If you did anything and you use speed mods, like nobody would regard it as a good score at first, especially in the beginning of 7th mix. So Max came out, people would go to New Jersey to play it, but all the arcades in New York City got Max 2, 7th mix. So we got Max 2. Max 2 was a good mix. And it kind of shifted everything for a few different reasons. It was a cleaner looking mix. It probably has something to do with the frame rate and how the game presented, but because of that and how much smoother it was, that's how I remember it anyway. How much smoother it was than 5th mix, I felt like it was easier to get perfect. So now all of a sudden people are getting like low digit great counts on songs. And it wasn't uncommon now to see people get like under 20 greats on a really difficult song, which was good. 7th mix was cool also because when it first came out and the arcades got it, they didn't use it's called a brain fart, sorry. It didn't unlock all the songs. When an arcade first got 7th mix, all the songs that were in the game weren't available, and in order to unlock these songs, you had to play songs that were already unlocked and get a high score on that song, and it would go toward the machine's unlockable songs that were slated to be unlocked, and so that was a big deal, and it was a big driver because we had already been competing with like New Jersey and Long Island, and now 7th mix kind of continued that. We would say like, oh, we would go on a DDR Freak and say like, we unlocked this song or we unlocked that song, and then this arcade would be like, oh, well, we already unlocked that song. And the songs that you unlocked, like that kind of determined how far along you were in the process. Eventually, every arcade unlocked every song. So that kind of pushed everybody forward. We all knew that Max 2 put another 10-footer in the game. That was Max Unlimited. I'll get to that in a little bit though. In my previous videos, I was talking about like some of the older players, some of the more influential players. And one of the players that I think is one of the most influential in terms of like old school New York City DDR was Dorian, or Spider-Man. Dorian had been playing way before I played. He was, I think, a big part of like the third mix days, and I think Barcode or one of the other arcades might have had like second mix. There were kind of talks of like a Korean mix in one of the arcades. I don't know if it's third mix Korean or like another arcade in New York City before I was playing had USA mix. But Dorian was involved in a lot of that. And Dorian was part of a DDR crew called JDS. I don't know everybody in JDS. I don't know everybody who was in JDS, but I believe it was Ironfoot, that's Sean. It was Dorian, Spider-Man. It was Sabrina. And it was Jennifer, and I think Hop Skip and Slide. I think Hop Skip and Slide was in JDS. He was Joseph. He was another really good, cool DDR player, old school guy. So that was JDS. They were all a little bit older than everybody else, and it was cool because like they would go play DDR, and I think afterwards they would all go bowling together, or they would go out drinking together because they were all over 21. So it was nice to see them, to come into the DDR scene and still get to experience that, to see like these older people who were having fun with the game. So Dorian, Spider-Man, he was part of JDS. He kind of fell back a little bit when the 5th mix and 7th mix came out. But in 7th mix, he kind of like made a little bit of a return. And he was really into, for some reason, AAAing songs on the easiest difficulty on light. I don't know if it was called light in 7th mix, but he was really into AAAing songs on the easiest difficulty. And the trick was that if it didn't really, I don't know how the scoring was exactly, but a AAA, like if you got all perfect steps on the song that you played, that AAA went toward, like, it was like a lot of points toward unlocking more songs. So Dorian would go to Broadway City on a Friday or a Saturday night. He would pick his songs, and he would pick them on the lightest difficulty, and he would AAA them. He was really accurate for that. And this is back in this time, this was still considered kind of an accomplishment. Like, to AAA anything was a big deal, whether it was light or heavy, and heavy was obviously more impressive. But to AAA light songs, people were kind of doing that, like AAA and like light songs and like medium level songs, just to kind of maybe people did it to like increase their the accuracy or whatever. But Dorian, he kind of came back. He kind of found his forte because he used to freestyle a little bit. He had a couple of routines. I'm not really sure what all of his routines are. I would love to talk to Dorian about all this stuff, but he had routines back in the day. But like his kind of like his return was like him coming to 7th mix and like AAAing a bunch of songs. Now the way that I remember it was that I was like up and coming, and I was more so on the forums. I was on DDR Freak. Long Island had a DDR forum that I can't remember the name of right now. And then there was Aaron in Japan. And Aaron in Japan had, I don't know exactly why, maybe just that, Aaron, the guy who ran the website, had a lot of internet bandwidth, or internet space. So either him or, whoever had the internet space would like host people's DDR pictures or their DDR videos. Again, this is before YouTube. This is before the internet, where you could just like make a photo bucket account and like put your photo on like a photo bucket account or a social media website. So it wasn't the easiest thing to get your picture online. Forget about a video. You had to like know somebody that was like, that had internet bandwidth or space that people could download your video every month. So Dorian would AAA stuff, and I would take pictures for him because he wasn't too much into like the DDR forums or anything. He wasn't really doing it for that necessarily. I think he had an account on Aaron in Japan, and he had an account on DDR Freak, but he wasn't into it like that. So like, just to kind of push New York forward, I would take pictures of his AAAs and then put them or send them. I don't remember if I had my own space or I would just post them on like the forum, but like I would put his AAA pictures on Aaron in Japan just to kind of like highlight his accomplishments. But man, like he unlocked. He was responsible for unlocking so much for us on that DDR machine in Broadway City. He would come and he would maybe go to other places too and play DDR, but his dedication to like AAA and stuff was like unbelievable. And even back then, like most of us were into playing like more difficult songs and, you know, trying to get better and everything. And people were still freestyling, but like Dorian just like he like hit the ground running with those like light AAAs and really like made it so that that machine like had everything unlocked. So Max 2 had two 10-footers. It had Max 300 and it had Max Unlimited. I don't remember if Max 300 was unlocked on Max 2 or just came, like you had to unlock it or it came unlocked, whatever. I don't remember, but I kind of avoided Max 300, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I love the Max Unlimited, like the way it sounded. I thought it was a really cool sounding song. And I knew about the steps from Stepmania, the DDR simulator. So I had been playing it on my fingers on my computer. And because I was so obsessed with it and I had already stealthed a few songs, I thought it would be really cool to stealth Max Unlimited. But I was also into trying to pass Max Unlimited on Extra Stage. See, on Max 2, the way it was that Max Unlimited didn't come unlocked by default. Like the only way you could play Max Unlimited was the easiest way to play Max Unlimited anyway was to play your 3 songs, and I think the third song may have had to be a AAA. Sorry, not AAA, a AA. I think I don't remember. It may not have been that way, but I think your third song had to be a AA, and if your third song was a AA, you would get this thing called Extra Stage. So you would get Extra Stage. This is from Max. Max, the DDR6 mix, DDR Max did the same thing for Max 300. So like you would get your Extra Stage, and the extra stage was always the song Max Unlimited. And not only was it Max Unlimited, it was the arrows were not going up, they were coming down, and they were spread out on 1.5 speed. And the stationary arrows weren't there. They weren't on the screen. And Max Unlimited was the arrows traveled at what the machine interpreted to be 320 beats per minute, which was really fast. Most songs in DDR didn't go that fast. So this song was ridiculously hard. I think during my time in DDR, Max Unlimited to me was the second most difficult song in the game, arguably. And maybe not. PSM Paranoia Survivor Max Challenge was the most difficult song in the game during my time playing DDR, like later on. But I would say Max Unlimited, maybe Paranoia Survivor Max on Heavy is arguably this also really difficult, but Max Unlimited was really hard. So nobody passed this song. Nobody passed this. Like people would be like, oh, I made it up to this part. I made it 20 seconds into Max Unlimited. I made it 30 seconds into Max Unlimited. Like people weren't even saying like I got this grade on Max Unlimited. They were saying like this is how far I made it into Max Unlimited on an Extra Stage. I wanted to pass it. I thought I could pass it back when nobody in the city could pass it. So if my memory serves me correctly, I was the first person in New York to pass Max Unlimited on Extra Stage. Stefan was better than me at the time, but I don't think anybody else, him, Matt, Vagrafine, Perfect Asymmetry, Sarcastic Mofo, I don't think any of these people passed Unlimited before me on Extra Stage. And I don't really think people cared. People were just waiting for it to get unlocked so they could play it normally. But I really wanted to pass it on Extra Stage, so I would play it and play it and play it. And then there's in the middle of the song, there's like this pause. And I remember making it up to the pause and then making it past the pause and making it to the end and then just one day I passed it. I was the first. I'm pretty sure I was the first person in New York to pass Max Unlimited on extra stage. And that was like, at that time, that was like my claim to fame. Like, I wasn't like the best at perfect attack. It wasn't like I was going to tournaments and like watching people, you know, picking Max Unlimited on them or whatever. And even if I could, like, if I was playing Max Unlimited against Stefan, he would get way more perfects than me. Like, but that was what I did. Like, I just did that. I passed Max Unlimited. I was obsessed with Max Unlimited. I had stealth Max Unlimited. And I was like into this song. As much as I was into Max Unlimited, that's how much I avoided Max 300. Let me take a sip of this tea. Excuse me. Max 300, what it did was it exposed a big weakness that I had in DDR. I couldn't use the same foot consecutively very fast. I think nowadays they call it, or like, I don't know when they started calling it, I think it's called a jackhammer, where you just step on the same arrow with the same foot really fast. This is like my kryptonite. And related to that, I couldn't do like the same two arrows really fast. Like I used to call it like machine gun runs, like where you have to drum your feet or something like that. Like this was essentially what almost had me quitting DDR. Like I almost quit DDR because of Max 300 and songs like the 6 Nicks Fantasy by the artist Melissa. This was like bad. Like I hated Max 300 because of this. I almost quit DDR because of this. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I can't think of what other songs were on Max 2 like this, but like if I played a tournament and I was playing one of my friends, they would just pick a song like an 8-footer or a 9-footer that had that in the song. Can't Stop Falling in Love, Speed Mix, Era, you name it. Anything that had like consecutive like jackhammers or like the same foot on the same arrow, I was gonna get washed. It was a wrap for me. I eventually got over that hump, and I remember staying in my kitchen at night and like trying different ways to like learn how to like push my feet up and down without sinking, because that's what would happen. My body would like slowly sink. I would be good for like 5 or 6 arrows on the beginning of like Max 300, where you have to like, it's like left down, left down, left down, left, right down, right down, right down, up, left, up. Like by the time I got to like left down, like my body was already sinking and I just couldn't move my feet anymore. And I learned to eventually like kind of hunch over a little bit. Again, like no bar, nobody was using the bar. I learned how to hunch over a little bit, and like that prevented me from sinking, and that kind of saved me from like quitting DDR, because I was like, I can't do it. Like I can't progress anymore. There was a DDR player from Laser Park who kind of made like a quick appearance in the DDR community. His name was Brian. I don't remember what Brian's nickname was. He was a really cool guy, and he was one of the first people after me to pass Max Unlimited. And I remember hearing about this, and I was like, who? And they were like, this guy from Laser Park, he passed Max Unlimited extra stage, but he used the bar. And I remember that being a big deal at the time, and everybody was like, well, he used the bar, so like it doesn't matter. And you know, that's just how it was back then. Like he used the bar, and like eventually Laser Park became like a really, like, it was like Laser Park and Broadway City were like kind of like cousin arcades. Like we would go to Broadway City on a Friday or a Saturday night, and then at like 9-10 o'clock there'd be like a roll call, like, yo, who wants to head over to Laser Park? We would go over to Laser Park until like 11:30, and then some people will go home, and then we'd be like, all right, we're gonna go back to Broadway City. So the Laser Park crew and the Broadway City crew were kind of like this, but Brian played at it was just, I just feel like it's always worth mentioning him because I feel like his name gets forgotten a lot. But he was a Laser Park DDR player, and he did pass Max Unlimited. I think he was the second person in the city to pass it on extra stage. I eventually not only got over the Max 300 hump that I was stuck in, but I wound up stealthing Max 300 too, because I was so pissed at like how this song used to kick my ass. It wasn't even the stamina, because at that point I had been playing Max Unlimited so much because I stealthed it. It had been unlocked. Dorian had helped us unlock it already. I've been playing it on stealth, so the stamina wasn't even an issue for me. It was really just like the fact that it would be like left down, left down, left down, upright, 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 like. But I stealth max 300 and max unlimited. 10 footers really like broke a lot of people, and I think a lot of people were not very happy with the way 10 footers present, like the way that people felt like 10 footers were just too much. And you know, I was a nutcase back then when it came to like difficulty and competition, so I didn't see it that way back then. But like looking back, I understand why a lot of people felt that way. So a lot of people stopped. I think a lot of people stopped playing DDR when they put 10 footers. They felt like that's all that people were gonna pick, and then, you know, it just felt like you had to be good at a 10 footer in order to play DDR, which wasn't the case, not at least when I played, but it did feel like that a little bit. There was some speed bumps in the story of New York City DDR, and especially in the extreme era, which I'll talk about in another video, that kind of proved that that wasn't always going to be the case, you know? At this time, the competition really boiled down to two people in terms of who was the best at perfect attack. It was really Perfect Asymmetry and Stefan, who at this point, I think almost everybody knew Stefan as 123 Kid. These are the two people that like, it boiled down to this. Now, Stefan was good at a lot of stuff. He was good at everything, but Stefan was good at 10 footers. He was good at 10 footers for that time period. He had double A'd both max 300 and max unlimited on 7 mix, which just to double A them back then was a big deal. Deshaun, man, I don't know what it was exactly about Deshaun. I feel like me and Deshaun have spoken about this, but I would love to ask Deshaun like in an interview or just like whatever. He just didn't play 10 footers. He just did not play 10 footers. You would catch him playing a 10 footer in a tournament if somebody picked it on him. And he would get a lot of perfects, but it would be something where like maybe he would trip up or fail. But I think like people even saw him double A the 10 footer. So like it's not that he couldn't do it, he just didn't play them. But he was good at like the weird, we used to call them sorrow songs, like I Feel, Rain of Sorrow, those songs that didn't have like a consistent beat, like they just kind of followed the synthesizer of the song. He was really good at those. Those songs were almost worse than 10 footers. Like you pick I Feel on somebody back in 7 mix when they didn't know the assistic to the song, they would fail or they would get like a C. You know, like Deshaun had triple A to I Feel on 7 mix, I believe, in like I don't know if it was a course or he just triple A. He either triple A'd it or got like under 5 greats. Back then that was insane. That was crazy on 7 mix. So Deshaun was good at almost everything, and Stefan was good at everything, and he was good at max unlimited and max 300. So Deshaun's I think the height of Deshaun's career, and I don't want to butcher this story, so I'm not really gonna get into the details of like the Sports World tournament, but there was a tournament in New Jersey in an arcade called Sports World. It was like a big deal. It was like a really big tournament. All of the heavy hitters from the East Coast were at this tournament, and at the end of it all, Deshaun won. You know, he played a bunch of people. There were like pretty much everybody was there. I think it was a couple of people from Connecticut, because Connecticut used to move stuff too for a while. It was Connecticut. They were in the mix when it came to DDR when I started playing, and then they kind of fell back for a little bit, and then they kind of came back into New York. They were kind of like it was like their villain era, which I'll talk about during like the earlier part of Extreme. Like there was this guy named Steve L from Connecticut, if you remember him, man. But I think a few people from Connecticut were in Deshaun's Sports World tournament, and then Maryland, like the DMV area, like that area was, if it wasn't New York or New Jersey, they were definitely one of the best areas on the East Coast. And so as the general story goes, you know, Deshaun wound up playing a bunch of them. There was some mind games involved. There was like, I think Max Paranoia was in that tournament. I don't know if White Silent, I don't know if he was in that tournament or not, but he was really good when I played at Extreme. And there was just a bunch of people, and the tournament wound up being that like Deshaun won. And when he won, it wasn't just like a random win. He won a stacked tournament. That was his like, I think that's when he retired. So, you know, Deshaun winning that tournament really solidified him as like being a DDR great. He played Extreme, but like not like he did in 5th and 7th mix, especially 7th mix. Stefan just kept like grinding and like getting better and getting good scores on songs, and you just couldn't stop Stefan. He was like unstoppable. He was like an unstoppable force. I remember him coming in one day to Broadway City. He was like, I don't know how many greats he got, but he was like, oh, I just got like 9 greats on Reign of Sorrow. And I was like, Reign of Sorrow? What's that? Like, I had never even heard of that song before. I think I played it later on, and I was just like, this song is like screwed up. Like, the step charts for Reign of Sorrow at the time were just really screwed up. And I think that statement stands the test of time, because I think people still try to like get all marvelouses on Reign of Sorrow or something. But I think Stefan came in one day, he was like, yeah, I just got, you know, a low grade count on Reign of Sorrow. He was really happy about it. So Stefan just kept pushing. At this time also, this is like the rise of our group DDPD. Omar, Officer O, had stopped playing. Really, he had stopped being involved. So it was me and Stefan kind of pushing at the forefront along with Fat Axel. Then there was Osh, his nickname was Devil in Black. And there was still Jing. There was Visor, our friend Andre. He was in DDPD. His nickname was Jinx. I still can't remember if my cousin Shayna was in DDPD. She might have been at one point. Our friend Clinton, his nickname was Tank. He was in DDPD. And we had other people who eventually wound up joining DDPD, but not until like later on. You know, because we had our friend Neil in DDPD. We had our friend Jason Lone Wolf in DDPD. Our friend Adam was in DDPD. Our friend Blake was in DDPD. We had people from upstate. Technic was in DDPD. Red Corona was in DDPD. So, you know, we grew, but like at this time in the 7th mix era, it was just like me, Stefan, you know, Sketch, 123 Kid, Fat Axel, Jing, Devil in Black, Visor, Jinx, Tank. You know, at one point, again, like Togo was he kind of like drifted into the fighting game community after DDR. So a lot of people know, they know David from the fighting game community. But I think his nickname in the fighting game community was Tinshi. But DDPD kind of like blew up a little bit more, and we were more prominent. I still got to make a video about just the crews. Like, I could talk for like 20-30 minutes on just the DDR crews, but I'm just mentioning like briefly that like DDPD kind of blew up a little bit more around this time, at the end of like the middle to the end of 7th mix. Yeah, man, it was a good time. A couple more things I want to mention before I wrap this video up. I have to like squeeze in more time to talk about Long Island DDR. Long Island in New York it's not New York City, but it's so connected to New York City, and a lot of Long Island players and New York players there was rivalries, but it was also a lot of camaraderie between Long Island and New York City. And it's hard to like get into that because they have such a rich history in Long Island DDR as well. And so much of Long Island DDR history has affected New York City DDR history. And I don't want to downplay anybody's accomplishments in Long Island, but one of the most influential people in DDR overall is Don Frequency. Don was a freestyler. He's, in my opinion, one of the top 5 freestylers in DDR in the country during that time period. Don stealthed a bunch of stuff too. Me and Don used to stealth Spin the Disc together, which was on 7th mix. That was a fun song to stealth with him. And he went on to like push DDR forward. He did a lot of DDR media. He hosted a lot of big DDR tournaments, the Jacob Javits Digital Life tournaments. but Don was from Long Island and he put a lot of stuff together. I can't really talk about Long Island because this video is already over 30 minutes. I could talk for like another 20 minutes about Long Island. I'll squeeze it in at some point. I'll try to, get a little bit more in terms of Long Island. But we had a good time competing against Long Island. They had good arcades out there. They had good players out there. So it was fun to play against Long Island. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of like my competition and like how I got competitive, or like how I got more and more competitive, is like I was always trying to like get as good as Stefan, because by this time me and Stefan were good friends. Like we were in the same DDR group, but we were also good friends. We would hang out together. Stefan, we would go to parties together, outside of DDR. He dated somebody from Staten Island. I dated somebody from Staten Island, so we would go out there. But I still didn't really know Deshaun that well, but I was always trying to get as good as Stefan and Deshaun. So in New York, what you would do is like the top players didn't really like when people sweat them. Like they were very like secretive about their scores. They didn't want people to to try to beat them on purpose. It was like get out of here. And that's how Deshaun and Stefan were, at least to me. You couldn't overtly try to like challenge them. So one day Deshaun was at Broadway City. He was just playing a game casually, just chilling, like minding his business. So I come up, he's playing by himself. I'm like, oh, can I play with you? And this is like when I started getting okay. And at the time, I was trying to AAA this song called Nothing's Gonna Stop, I think it was called. It was like an easy, low-hanging fruit AAA that a lot of people used to do. And I didn't AAA it, but I think my best on it was like 3 greats at this time, which was like, again, this is like, if you could get single-digit greats on a song, this was good. So I was like, yo, I'm gonna try to beat Deshaun in a DDR match, which was kind of sneaky because he didn't see it that way. He just saw it as like, this guy Sketch just wants to play with me. That's probably how he saw it. But maybe at some point he caught wind of what I was trying to do, because I'm like fidgeting on the pad. I'm just like looking, So I get up on the pad and I pick Nothing's Gonna Stop. So I'm trying, like I am trying to like get more perfects than him. And I don't remember if I did or not, because I think that by the time the song was over, he probably caught wind of what I was trying to do. But either I got a couple more perfects than him, or I almost did. And I think he kind of got like annoyed, like, what the fuck is this guy doing? So I think he picked Sweet Love Magic on me, or like one of those weird songs, like not a straightforward song, and then just watched me. It was one of those songs. It might have been Sweet Love Magic, or like another like 8-footer, like those weird 8-footers that are not just so straightforward. And then like I was tripping all over the place. I got like 40 or 50 greats, and he got his like 15 greats. And then the third song didn't even matter. So like I tried to sneak one in on Deshaun back then. I figured maybe I could go back and be like, yo, I beat Perfect the Symmetry in like a set. But nah, that didn't work. But it was funny because it always stuck in my mind. So I think that's really it for the 7th mix era. I could talk about this era a little bit more, but this kind of summarizes like my experience with it at that time. If you're watching this video and like you did play during that time, let me know what you think of like how 7th mix felt. Like I thought 7th mix was a great mix. I thought the home version for USA and Japan was good. It had a good feeling to it. It still had connections to like the old school DDR culture, because this was the last mix before my era, like my dominance in DDR came about. So it still had that old feel, like right before Extreme. But I thought 7th mix was great. So let me know what you think about like the 7th mix era. Let me know what you think of this video, or if you watched this video and you played and you thought I got some information wrong, I got something twisted up. It's been a long time, so like feel free to correct me if you want in the comment section. But if you watched the whole video, thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and stay tuned for more.